Jeep has a heritage going all the way back to 1941, but smaller models to compete in the compact SUV sector have only arrived in fairly recent years. Cars like this much improved Compass, which returned to the UK market in 2011. This is the first time the brand has offered buyers the option of two-wheel drive, opportune in a sector now demanding it. The segment also wants this kind of car to be smarter, plusher and more efficient, and Jeep reckons that this Compass is exactly that. Jeep is a tough breed of car and a tough brand, which is just as well given the knocks that it's taken over the last few years. But it's back with fresh ownership from Fiat and fresh models like this rejuvenated Compass. Now these days the company isn't frightened to make all-wheel drive an option on smaller models like this one, a move that speaks of a more forward-thinking, pragmatic approach. The idea is that two-wheel drive will open up ownership of this car to family hatchback drivers looking to trade up, while the all-wheel drive models are, Jeep hopes, plush, classy and capable enough to make potential RAV4 and Freelander owners think twice before stumping up a lot more money. These kinds of cars heavily prioritise the on-tarmac prowess that's all most buyers will ever need, something Jeep has compromised in the past in pursuit of rock-hopping credibility. Now, this car will still go further in the muck than most of its rivals, but the idea now is that you shouldn't constantly be reminded of the fact on the school run. Just as importantly, this model's smarter Mini Grand Cherokee looks will need to be more than skin deep, blended with a value proposition strong enough to lift this Compass clear of other budget-minded compact SUVs. Now, if Jeep has pulled all of this off in this car, then its prospects may yet look bright. But has it? Let's find out. If you're after one of those compact SUVs that drive just like the sportiest family hatchbacks, then I have to say right up front that this isn't one of those. But if you haven't driven anything from this class of car for some time, then you might be surprised by just how little adjustment there is going to be switching into one from something Focus or Astra-sized. You'll like the high-set driving position, the good all-round visibility, and the way that the gear lever falls nicely to hand. Power for most will come courtesy of a 2.2-litre Mercedes-sourced turbo diesel, a big improvement on the old Volkswagen unit, and it's available in two states of tune, either 134 brake horsepower for two-wheel drive CRD Compass buyers, or 161 brake horsepower if you go for the four-wheel drive version that I'm driving here. Yes, you heard that correctly. This is the first Jeep to be offered with the option of just two driven wheels. Indeed, a feature you'll be stuck with if you opt for the entry-level petrol 2-litre version, which has 154 brake horsepower. The only petrol Compass with four driven wheels is the minority interest 168 brake horsepower 2.4-litre CVT automatic version. Before Jeep diehards throw up their hands in horror, it's worth pointing out that many of the brand's legendary attributes are retained even on the 4x2 models, which will take up about 40% of sales. So, thanks to 209mm of ground clearance, you still get a car that's capable of fording up to 279mm of water. And thanks to a 20-degree approach angle, a 20-degree breakover angle, and a 30-degree departure angle, you'll get yourself a car that, fitted with the right tyres, might still be able to surprise you off-road. But if, understandably, you see little point in buying a car of this kind, especially a Jeep, without the benefit of four-wheel drive, then you'll want to opt for the 2.2-litre CRD 4x4 model that I have here, fitted as it is with Jeep's Freedom Drive 1 all-wheel drive system. Now, like many similar type setups, this directs drive to the front wheels for most of the time, with an electronically controlled clutch to also bring the rear wheels into play should conditions get a bit slippy. There are no knobs or buttons to push and pull unless you plan on taking your Compass somewhere a bit more challenging. At this point you'll need the locking centre coupling, activated by pulling up on this chrome T-bar by the handbrake. Now this deactivates the automatic function on the Freedom Drive system, instead enforcing a 50-50 torque split with the same amount of power going to the front and the rear, thus equipping the driver better to be able to deal with deep snow, sand or really gnarly muddy tracks. All very impressive, but what really matters is how this car performs on tarmac, where it will of course spend 95% of its time. Now, this side of things I wasn't approaching with very high expectations given experiences in the previous generation version of this car, but actually it's much improved, going pretty much where you point it and riding with a kind of precision that you don't normally expect from a Jeep. Slightly vague power steering means that you won't want to be throwing your compass around the lanes, but if you are on such a road and find yourself needing to press on a bit, then you'll find that a package of changes, which has included firmer springs and dampers, auxiliary rebound springs and a thicker anti-roll bar, well, it's all meant that the engineers have been able to achieve a better balance between supple comfort and body movement that doesn't wallow through the bends. There's nothing too shocking in terms of the performance on offer. Both diesels make 125 miles an hour flat out, with the entry-level 134 brake horsepower model managing rest to 60 in 11.5 seconds, a figure that the 161 brake horsepower variant trims to 9.8 seconds. Both of those models have a 6-speed manual gearbox. If you opt for the 2-litre petrol variant, then it has a 5-speeder. And like the 2.4 litre CVT automatic, it manages rest to 60 in about 10.5 seconds and a top speed of about 115 miles an hour. But more important than these bald performance figures are the torque figures that you get across the range, particularly on the diesel variants. Both CRDs record 320 Newton meters of pulling power, and that's going to be very useful for the many Compass owners who want to assign towing duties to this car. With a diesel engine, it'll pull a braked trailer of up to 2,000 kilograms. The original Compass model, launched in 2007, sold alongside another compact Jeep, the Patriot. Chunky and more muscular looking, so that Compass customers could get something more avant-garde, trendy and mini-like. It wasn't well received, with bug-eyed round headlamps that looked as surprised as Jeep diehards were at its launch. That Compass, which lasted only a couple of years on the UK market, lives on under the skin of this one. But you wouldn't know it, so far-reaching were the changes made to this car for its return to the British SUV segment in the spring of 2011. Now, by then the Patriot had gone, so this vehicle needed to appeal to a much wider cross-section of buyers. Everyone, in fact, who wanted a day-to-day usable Jeep but couldn't stretch to a Grand Cherokee. This then was the car the Compass should have been from the very beginning, with sporty design cues like the steeply raked windscreen, the roof rails and sleek door mirrors matched to classic Jeep design language, the traditional 7-slot front grille and the squared off wheel arches. Now, these two aspects clashed in the original version of this car. Now, thanks to more purposeful styling borrowed from the 4th generation Grand Cherokee model, they blend together. There's a tough, cohesive look to the Jeep lineup these days, and at this level it's a world away from the shy, polite look of a rival Hyundai iX35, Skoda Yeti or Volkswagen Tiguan. Inside, the elevated driving position hasn't changed, but the dash has been restyled to good effect. Now, much more of an upmarket feel is required from this class of car these days. So there's soft padded trim added to the upper parts of the front doors, as well as to the central armrest, to compensate for the hard plastic that remains on the dash. Now, you wouldn't mistake the cabin for that of a Volkswagen Tiguan or even a Kia Sportage, but it's very smartly turned out in its own way, with splashes of chrome, illuminated central cup holders, backlighting for the door handles and leather trim for the steering wheel and the handbrake lever all do their best to create a premium feel. For the driver, getting comfortable would be a little easier if this good-looking 3-spoke wheel adjusted for reach as well as for rake, but I like this chunky feel of it and the way that the centre console armrest slides forward 3 inches to suit all shapes and sizes, as well as the way that the gear stick is mounted on this protruding part of the centre console so it falls easily to hand. For total comfort though, you'll need one of the plusher versions like this one with their 6-way electrically adjustable seat. You can't fault the family touches though, the very large centre storage bin, the generously sized glove box with its shelf above, the 12-volt power socket for powering up phones or MP3 players, and the electrically folding mirrors that guard against parking knocks. The rear bench is supposed to be able to accommodate up to 3 adults, but thanks to this high central transmission tunnel which restricts space for the middle occupant, that'll only be for quite short journeys. 3 kids will be quite comfortable here though, and 2 adults will also sit in actually some comfort for this class of car, thanks to decent standards of leg, head and shoulder room, as well as seats that recline by up to 12 degrees for greater comfort on longer trips. Behind, there's a thoughtfully designed 458 litre luggage area with some nice touches, including this interior light that unclips to become a powerful torch. You've also got these speakers that fold out to create al fresco music as your steaks sizzle on the barbecue. Now, if you need extra luggage space, well, it's a bit awkward to get these 60-40 split folding seats to fold down, but at least once you do, they go completely flat, so that you can make the best use of the 1,269 litre loading area. And there's even more than that if you're able to take advantage of the fold flat front passenger seat that will enable you to carry longer, bulkier items like a surfboard or perhaps a mountain bike with all the wheels still in place. Now, if you're going to be considering a Compass, it's as well to know where it sits in the SUV market. Your Jeep dealer will be quick to tell you that buying one of these will save you between £2,000 and £5,000 over the kind of compact SUV that perhaps you'd ideally like. Something like, say, a Land Rover Freelander, a Toyota RAV4 or a Honda CR-V. Volkswagen's Tiguan is a little closer in price. It's about £2,000 more in two-wheel drive diesel form. But the reality is that this Jeep doesn't actually compete with those kinds of cars. It's been pitched instead against more budget-orientated contenders in this sector. Cars like Kia's Sportage, Hyundai's iX35, Skoda's Yeti, maybe even Suzuki's Grand Vitara. And sure enough, Compass pricing is pretty closely matched to all of these contenders. Now, let's start in the two-wheel drive part of this segment. It's pretty hard to find a two-wheel drive compact 4x4, at least a pokey diesel one, that doesn't cost well over £20,000, but the Compass range provides it with the 134 brake horsepower 2.2 litre CR-Di two-wheel drive model. For around £3,000 less, around £17,000 or so, you can get two-wheel drive Compass motoring in 2-litre petrol form, and that variant competes directly against 2 obvious rivals. You can either go for a Hyundai iX35 1.6 GDI two-wheel drive, which offers a bit less petrol power, or Suzuki's four-wheel drive Grand Vitara 2.4, which feels a bit cheap. So the Compass stacks up reasonably well in two-wheel drive form, but if you're looking at a Jeep, then you're probably also going to want four-wheel drive in many cases. So it's important that this Compass stacks up well here too. And sure enough, the 2.2 four-wheel drive CR-Di model with 161 brake horsepower, that's the car I've been testing here, and it's probably the one that most will want. Well, it's matched in the muck only by Suzuki's slower, cruder Grand Vitara 1.9 DDIS, which costs about the same. Other comparably powerful diesel four-wheel drive compact 4x4 contenders that are really rivals to this car include cars like Hyundai's iX35 2-litre CRDI, Kia's automatic-only Sportage 2-litre CRDI, or perhaps even the Skoda Yeti 2-litre TDI 170. But all of these have four-wheel drive systems that are really more aimed at icy tarmac roads than proper off-roading ability. Whichever two or four-wheel drive Compass model you choose, the 2-litre manual petrol, the 2.4-litre CVT automatic petrol, or either of the two 2.2-litre CRDI diesels, you should find your car to be decently equipped, because all of them come with alloy wheels, front fog lights, air conditioning, all-round electric windows, power folding mirrors. You get cruise control, a trip computer, which appropriately enough includes a compass, a 12-volt power socket, a decent quality MP3 compatible CD stereo with controls on the leather-covered steering wheel, and a hill holder clutch to stop you drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Now, top spec models obviously go a bit further than that, including the Bluetooth phone connectivity, the climate control and the USB socket that you would expect, but also adding in trim items that many rivals can only dream about. So, for example, on this plus spec variant that I've been testing, you get leather trim, heated electric front seats, part electric adjustment, height adjustment for the driver's front seat, and also a 6-disc in-dash CD auto changer. As for options, well, perhaps the most desirable is the Uconnect sound and navigation system. It features a 30 gigabyte hard drive, which can store thousands of songs, and via a 6.5-inch colour touchscreen enable operators to format playlists and view picture files and videos. The setup features an 8-channel 360 watt amplifier with 9 speakers and a powerful subwoofer. And the availability of speakers that fold down out of the rear tailgate means that owners can enjoy their music outside as well. Safety-wise, every Compass has 10 airbags, stability control, the usual electronic assistance for braking and traction, and an ERM electronic roll mitigation system that can brake individual wheels should the vehicle be about to flip over. There's anti-whiplash head restraints to minimise neck injuries in the event of a rear-end shunt, and there's equal effort being expended on security with an engine immobiliser and a Thatcham category alarm there to make life difficult for thieves. No new vehicle can dodge the efficiency issue these days, and although the Compass isn't a standard setter in this respect in its sector, its running costs won't break the bank. Even the thirstiest 2.4-litre petrol CVT automatic variant records 199 grams per kilometre of CO2 and a combined cycle fuel figure of 32.8 miles to the gallon. Much more impressive are the figures recorded by the lower powered diesel with 134 brake horsepower and two-wheel drive. It records 46.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out 161 grams per kilometre of CO2. And those are figures that wouldn't look bad coming from a pokier ordinary family hatch. The more powerful CRD 2.2-litre diesel with four-wheel drive, the variant that I'm driving here, manages 42.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and a CO2 return of 172 grams per kilometre. Insurance should be affordable, and residual values, Jeep promises, will be a big improvement on some of their previous compact models. Now, you get the impression that customers in the compact SUV sector want Jeep to succeed. They may not have bought its cars in the recent past, but they'd like to have been able to credibly consider them. Now they can again. This Compass may not be the most avant-garde looking or the most sophisticated affordable small SUV you can buy, but unlike its predecessor, it's now a tough and tempting way to buy into this macho marque. It may not meet the purist perception of a real Jeep, but it's the people's idea of one. A product you purchase picturing yourself At a beach barbecue, tailgate open, speakers hinge downwards, blasting the blues towards the crashing waves. If it cost RAV4 or Freelander money, you might still think twice, but it doesn't, competing instead with Far Eastern budget brand rivals, still lacking credibility in this sector. And credibility, of course, is something that the Jeep name has never lacked. Good to see it then, with products now worthy of that famous badge.